Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about the 5 books that I've read that have completely changed my life, and hopefully you'll get some book recommendations out of this video. So let's get started. Number 1 is Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. Now, I used to say that I wish that I could plug myself into the wall and recharge instead of going unconscious for 8 to 9 hours every single day, because I just love life and I didn't want to be sleeping for a third of the day every single day. But honestly, that was a really bad mentality to have. Sleep is so important, and reading this book will teach you just how important it is. There are some facts from this book that I still remember that were just so shocking. But one of the things that I learned is that driving when you're sleep deprived, which could be driving on 6 hours of sleep for the last few nights, which honestly I feel like is really common. I used to do that. I used to sleep max like 6 hours per night. But when you're driving in that state, it's just as bad as driving drunk. So when I learned that, I was like, whoa, that is scary. Not to mention that car crashes that are related to someone falling asleep on the wheel are way more fatal than actual drunk driving crashes, because you actually just fall asleep. You're not just slower, you just completely fall asleep and lose all control of the car in that moment. So that was one scary fact that I still remember and has really inspired me to prioritize sleeping. Now, I actually don't have a car anymore, so I'm not driving on a daily basis, but there are also so many facts in that book that say that sleep is so important for your health. And as someone who wants to be a 80-year-old who's doing push-ups and pull-ups and running marathons, hopefully, hearing that was so important, because I didn't realize how important sleep was for your health. So if you have the same mentality that I used to have, or if you just want to hear more or learn more about the effect of sleep on the human body, I would highly recommend this book. Again, it was life-changing. I had to read it twice, and honestly, I feel like I might read it a third time now that I'm talking about it. Book number 2 is An Immense World by Ed Yong. This book was so interesting. In this book, Ed talks about the different way that animals experience the world. Like, as humans, we have our 5 senses, but animals sometimes have other senses as well, or just different ways of experiencing the senses that we also have. For example, the way dogs smell things is different than the way humans smell things, which is why we have dogs sniffing out drugs at the airport and not humans. But it was so cool. I honestly can't even begin to explain, because again, it wasn't like anything I'd ever read before, honestly, but it was so cool. There's this one portion of the book that I also keep thinking about to this day, because it was so interesting and also quite relevant now that I live in Australia. But he talks about a specific species of spider that, well, you know, spiders, when they're on their web, they have this sensory feel of, you know, when things get caught on it, to go and, like, I don't know, web their food or eat it, whatever. They have this sensory feel of their web. However, there's a species of spider that developed in a way where they can actually walk through another spider's web without the spider sensing it, and then they'll go and steal that spider's food. It was also talking about bats and their echolocation and just random things, like why in dogs they have the little slit beside their nose. Yeah, it was just really interesting, and it makes you realize that our experience of the world is like so unique and so different from all of the other animals that are walking this planet, and it just makes you appreciate just how incredible life is. I don't even know how to say, like, I don't even know how to describe it. At the end of the book, Ed also talks about how we don't always realize the effect that we may have on these animals, because we're not thinking about the world the way they experience the world. So I think one example of this was in national parks with the parking lot, like the lights in the parking lot. If we only changed it to a different color, we could help save, I think it was like random bugs, I don't know. But yeah, we just don't focus on how different animals experience the world. Even with like wind power, right? With the, what are those called? I don't know. But birds always get caught in them because when they're flying, they're not looking straight. They're looking down to catch their prey. They can't actually see straight in front of them. So that's why they always run into those things and get killed. So yeah, it was just really interesting to learn about that. And if you're curious, I would highly recommend it. It was so cool to learn about. Book number 3 is Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. Now, I understand why some people criticize this book. Bill Perkins is a multimillionaire, and him speaking about money comes from a very, very privileged position. However, I do think there is some wisdom in this book as well. Basically, the premise of this book is that you should aim to die with $0 in your bank account. Now, I know we can't predict when we're gonna die, but I think the overall sentiment of the book is that you should be wanting to use your money while you're still alive and enjoy it, because otherwise, what was the point of making it in the first place? And I know people will say, well, what about your kids? What about like charity? Like, well, don't you want to leave something for them when you die? And spoiler alert, Bill says, hey, yes, you should be wanting to give money to your kids if you have money to give. Why don't you just give money to them when they're young and actually need it, and when you actually get to enjoy it with them? Because when they're 60 plus years old and have their own money, they won't appreciate it as much. And at the same time, if you give money to them while you're still alive, hey, you get to enjoy it with them. So I thought that was very insightful, and I never really thought about it that way, but I agree with him. Why would you want to leave the money when you're dead when you can just enjoy it with them when they're young and, again, actually need it? Another takeaway from this book was that your health is just going to decline over time. And so there are things that you can do now that you won't be able to do when you're 60, 70, 80, 90 years old. And you should be wanting to spend your money to have these experiences before you can't anymore. And one cool exercise that he recommended that you do is take out a piece of paper and list all of the things that you want to do in your life that you can think of. For example, like, I want to do an Ironman one day. I want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. All these things, just list them out. And then kind of set an age range for when you would want to do these activities. That way you can prioritize the way you're using your money. And I think that was really eye-opening, because I think we can kind of get into this rut where we're just saving and investing and not exactly living life. And then you wake up one day and you realize, oh my God, I wanted to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, but now I can't because my health will not allow me to. The way I grew up, my parents always prioritized spending money on experiences rather than physical gifts and items. Like, you weren't a very material family. And those values were always instilled in me. And I have always spent my money on the experiences that I wanted to have without even thinking about it, which also comes from a very privileged position. Now that I'm talking about this, I'm realizing, the big theme here is you should spend your money on experiences because they will just make you have a so much happier and more fulfilled life. Way more than physical items or material things ever could. And in doing so, you should be very aware of the fact that there are some experiences that you won't be able to do as you age. So you should be allocating your money towards these activities while you can. So that's Die with Zero. Moving on to book number 4, which is Atomic Habits by James Clear. Now, I made a video on this channel about the habits that I've implemented in my life that have completely changed it for the better. And after reading this book, I realized that I kind of implemented some of the things that James was talking about without even really knowing it. And the things that I've implemented really made sure that I actually established those habits and they actually became true habits that I didn't even think about and just did every day. But in this book, if you're in the personal development space, you absolutely probably have heard of this book. But just to give you a quick summary, James Clear talks about habits, why you should want to establish habits, and how to do so in an easy and effective way. He also uses the same strategy to explain to you how to avoid bad habits. So I really enjoyed the book. I thought it was very insightful. And if you want to improve your life, just read Atomic Habits. Last but not least, book number 5 is Quiet by Susan Cain. Now, I have always been an introvert, and I'm not the loudest person in the room by any means. And I always felt bad about that in a way. I felt like that was something that I should be avoiding, and I should want to be extroverted, and I should want to be the loudest voice in the room. But this book really made me appreciate my introvertedness and really sit with it and notice that there are amazing things that come out of just being a quieter person. If you're an extrovert, I don't really recommend this book because she kind of talks bad about extroverts. But if you are an introvert, highly recommend reading it because it'll give you a self-esteem bump. Like, hey, being an introvert is also important. And there are some amazing things that come with this characteristic. So if you're an introvert, highly recommend picking it up. Now I have one last book to talk about, which is an honorable mention, and it's called Nonviolent Communication. Now, I feel like a lot of people today are familiar with nonviolent communication, but if you aren't, I highly recommend picking up this book. It is such a good guide in terms of how to approach conflicts with the people in your life, and it really helps you do so in a healthy and productive way. And that is something that I've been implementing in my life throughout the past couple years, and it has made me so much more confident in approaching people with issues that I may have. So if you're a people pleaser and you like to avoid conflict at all costs, I highly recommend you picking up this book because it makes it sound not so scary because you realize, oh, I'm just communicating in a nonviolent way and we can fix things and move forward. And honestly, conflict, I've realized in the past few years, is very important in developing the relationships in your life. So learning how to do that in a nonviolent way can be life-changing. So that is my honorable mention. I feel like a lot of people kind of already know how to communicate nonviolently, but if you just want a refresher or if you just want a guide, I think the book is pretty short too. I highly recommend picking it up. So those are the 5 books plus my honorable mention, the 6 books that have completely changed my life. Let me know down below if you're interested in reading any one of these, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!